He reported me to ICE the day after I cooked my grandmother's favorite recipe, then told everyone I was manipulating the building with ethnic smells. When I confronted him, he rolled his eyes and said, "It's not my fault fermented cabbage killed my mom." I stayed silent. That was 6 months ago. Tonight, he signed my visa renewal with shaking hands and wouldn't look me in the eye. Listen up, because I'm about to tell you about the pettiest food fight since someone decided pineapple belonged on pizza. Ewan moved in 6 months ago with the superpower of Korean cooking and the fatal flaw of being nicer than a Canadian at a compliment convention. They're out here playing Oprah with bulgogi. You get kimchi! You get kimchi! Everybody gets kimchi! The mailman started timing his route around Ewan's cooking schedule like a Pavlovian experiment gone delicious. Mrs. Romero from 4B downloaded Duolingo just to properly thank them in Korean. Even Dennis, who times his bathroom breaks between sets and refers to chicken breast as protein, pretended to love it. Dennis once claimed he was saving it for later, while actively feeding bulgogi to a stray cat. He'd ask for recipes for his mom, while his search history showed how to eat kimchi without crying and is Korean food gains friendly. Then Ewan's grandmother got sick. Not Facebook sympathy sick, actually dying sick. Ewan spent 8 hours making her favorite doenjang jjigae, the kind of cooking where you ugly cry into the pot and somehow the tears become seasoning. They rushed to the hospital with this liquid love letter. While Ewan was literally watching their grandmother flatline, Dennis executed what historians will call the jerk herd round the building. He approached that pot like a bomb disposal expert who learned everything from YouTube, dragged it to the dumpster, then dumped it. Afterward, he had the audacity to Venmo request Ewan, saying $50 biohazard disposal, then got updated to $75 for emotional damages, then $100 for lost gains. Ewan came home to 2 tragedies, a dead grandmother and murdered soup. Dennis's response? Bro, that smell was literally making my pre-workout curdle. Now, most people would have gone full John Wick with a kimchi twist. Ewan? They found their grandmother's recipe book with a note that said, "Feed people with love," and apparently interpreted it as, "Call them with kindness and cholesterol." Ewan announced they'd be cooking their grandmother's memorial dinner in the apartment. They invited everyone. The neighbors Dennis terrorized with his 5 a.m. motivational grunting, the mailman, who brought his emotional support Tupperware, and Dennis's mother, whom Ewan found on Facebook. "You're welcome to join us," Ewan told Dennis, serving politeness with a side of impending doom. Dennis's response: "I'd rather eat my own protein powder dry." Saturday arrived like karma wearing an apron and carrying a grudge. The smell hit the hallway like a K-pop band hits American teenagers, suddenly and with devastating effect. Neighbors showed up with flowers and empty stomachs. Then Dennis's mom walked in carrying a casserole and the energy of someone who posts minion memes unironically. "Ewan, honey, Dennis talks about your cooking constantly." Dennis, mid-Zoom with his Crypto Bro podcast, heard his mother's voice, and his face went through all 5 stages of grief in real time, his jaw unhinging like a broken Pez dispenser. She knocked with mom strength. "Dennis Eugene Davidson, I didn't carry you in my womb for 9 months to hide from nice neighbors." Dennis emerged looking like someone had just told him creatine causes ED. 20 people were passing around kimchi like communion wine while his mother pulled out her iPad. "Oh, I have to show everyone Dennis's baby photos." The room went quieter than Dennis's Tinder matches. "He raves about your bulgogi," she continued, oblivious to her son's soul leaving his body. "He even asked me to try making it, but I told him nothing beats the original chef." After everyone left, Dennis went full supervillain origin story. He created a PowerPoint titled "The Kimchi Crisis, a Threat to Our Property Values," complete with a graph showing the smell radius he'd measured with actual tape. He reported Ewan for running an illegal restaurant, posted in the building Facebook group about ethnic smells, yes, in all caps, and started a petition that got 3 signatures: his burner account, and somehow, probably accidentally, his mom. The landlord showed up to investigate these toxic fumes. He left with 3 Tupperware containers and asking if Ewan did catering. Dennis's mom returned with her entire book club, 12 wine-hammered suburbanites ready to learn the secrets of gochujang. During the next building meeting, Dennis made one last desperate play. "It's Ewan making all the food." The room erupted, not in support, in laughter that made next-door drama look like LinkedIn networking. Mrs. Romero stood up. "We know, Dennis. We've been trying to get them to cater the building potluck for months." Dennis's petition got hijacked faster than his pre-workout shakes. It now reads, "Keep our building Dennis free," with 147 signatures and counting. The property manager said he has to follow building policy, where if a large number of residents ask for someone to be removed, they have to be evicted. He was given 30 days, but he planned to make every single one of those days count. I knew Dennis would turn those 30 days into his personal vendetta Olympics. What I didn't expect was him starting at 5 a.m. on day 1. The zip tie made a satisfying click as Dennis secured his own eviction notice to my door handle. He'd photocopied it, laminated it, and now it dangled there like the world's pettiest door decoration. I discovered this artistic installation while checking my phone, where 3 food delivery apps had suspended my accounts for operating a residential business. The timing wasn't coincidental. Dennis emerged from his apartment carrying a protein shaker. Not unusual, except this one contained 3-day-old kimchi juice that had achieved a consistency somewhere between motor oil and revenge. We locked eyes in the hallway. Neither of us spoke. He fumbled with the lid, fingers slipping on the condensation. The container tumbled from his grip in slow motion. Red liquid spread across the hallway floor like a crime scene. The smell hit us both simultaneously. Dennis gagged, actually gagged, at his own biological weapon. His face went through several shades of green before settling on a color I'd previously only seen in expired yogurt. He stumbled backward, hand over his mouth, and disappeared into his apartment. I grabbed paper towels from my kitchen. By the time I returned, Dennis had recovered enough to stand in his doorway, proclaiming loudly enough for the entire floor to hear about health hazards and toxic spillage. His performance got interrupted when I held up my phone, showing his Instagram story from last month. There he was, grinning at Korean BBQ, captioned, "Gains fuel, authentic Sacher soul food." Mrs. Chen from 3C poked her head out. Mr. Park from 2A cracked his door. They exchanged glances that said everything. The building's washing machine chose that afternoon to give up. It made a grinding noise like a garbage disposal trying to digest silverware, then stopped mid-cycle. Dennis and I stood there, staring at our soaking clothes trapped behind the locked door. The repair estimate came to $500. Whoever admitted to overloading it would pay. We maintained eye contact for 30 seconds. Neither of us blinked. Neither of us admitted anything. I hauled my grandmother's blankets back to my apartment, water dripping a trail down the hallway. Each blanket weighed about 40 pounds wet. My Uber Eats shift started in an hour, but hand washing would take at least 3. I made my choice. My grandmother's things came first. Dennis spent that time making rounds. I heard him through the thin walls, explaining to anyone who'd listen how industrial-level cooking grease had definitely broken the washer's motor. The vapor alone, he insisted, could corrode metal. 3 neighbors nodded along. Mrs. Martinez looked skeptical but said nothing. My phone buzzed. My employer needed updated visa documentation. Then it buzzed again. Mrs. Chen had fallen in her unit. Then a third time. Someone had slipped an anonymous note under doors. Revitalux Development has made an offer on the building. I stared at the 3 notifications. Immigration lawyer or injured neighbor. The appointment had taken 6 weeks to get. Mrs. Chen was 78. I chose the lawyer. 2 hours later, I returned to find Dennis holding court in the lobby. He'd assembled an audience of 5 residents, describing my selective compassion, how I'd ignored Mrs. Chen's emergency, how I only helped when it benefited me. Behind him, Marcus from 5B held up his phone at an angle that suggested he wasn't texting. That night, Dennis nearly dropped his phone when he opened a spam email about structural inspections for unit subdivisions. His studio was supposed to be part of 4B. The wall he'd installed 2 years ago wasn't exactly legal. I watched him pace his apartment for an hour, measuring the wall with his hands like he could make it retroactively up to code. 9-year-old Lily from the 2nd floor knocked on my door the next morning. She held a clipboard and a serious expression. Mr. Dennis taught me percentage calculations, she announced. I sold 47% more Girl Scout cookies in his assigned area than yours. She showed me the chart. Dennis had color-coded it. The Amazon delivery truck arrived that afternoon. I watched from my window as the driver left a package by Dennis's door. The box was the exact size and shape of an industrial ozone generator, the kind that could eliminate any smell but came with warnings about respiratory damage. Retrieving the delivery photo would mean admitting I'd been documenting Dennis's packages. The return window was 48 hours. I had a decision to make. I made it at 2 a.m., creeping down the hallway with my phone. The serial number was visible through a gap in the box. Just needed one clear photo. The flash went off. I'd forgotten to disable it. Dennis's door flew open. He stood there in CrossFit-branded pajamas, phone already recording. I wonder what Dennis's real deal is with Korean food. He's eating it at restaurants but can't handle the smell at home. Something doesn't add up about his whole story here. By morning, the building's WhatsApp group featured a video titled, "You Encasing Apartments? Is your unit next?" Jerry the mailman found me in the lobby the next day. He needed someone who'd lived in the building for 2 years to co-sign his daughter's apartment application. Only Dennis and Mr. Park qualified. Mr. Park hadn't left his apartment in 6 months. My grief insomnia had me cooking at 3 a.m. now. Kimchi jjigae at the devil's hour. Marcus's phone appeared at my kitchen window, recording through the gap in my curtains. The timestamp would show weekend, but I knew he'd crop that out when he shared it. The building WhatsApp group became evidence storage. Dennis screenshotted every kimchi emoji I'd ever sent, labeling them intimidation tactics. Marcus screenshotted everything from both sides, creating neat folders labeled documentation. My anxiety had developed its own anxiety. I'd started mapping Dennis's movement patterns on a grid, trying to chart the optimal times to use the hallway without encountering him. Someone shared a photo of my chart, calling it stalking behavior. They didn't recognize it as the kind of thing you do when your nervous system treats your neighbor like a human car alarm. Dennis convinced our property manager he needed package room access for security volunteering. He'd staged a package theft the week before, complete with blurry footage of someone who looked suspiciously like his cousin Rico. I watched him make a copy of the key at the bodega. My grandmother's ashes were arriving FedEx tomorrow. 4 sleepless nights made everything feel like it was underwater. When the Amazon driver knocked for the 5th time in an hour, I snapped, yanked the door open, yelled something about harassment and corporate surveillance. The driver was Rico, Dennis's cousin Rico. The footage went straight to Dennis, then to the WhatsApp group, then to anyone who'd listen. Amit from work stopped returning my texts after his landlord mentioned that problem tenants affect everyone's references. His landlord went to the same CrossFit box as Dennis. Amit was month to month. He couldn't risk it. The bodega owner mentioned someone had been warning delivery drivers about the unstable resident who dumps soup. My orders started taking 90 minutes. The food arrived cold. The drivers wouldn't make eye contact. Dennis filed a formal complaint with the health department about commercial food preparation in residential units. Marcus forwarded it anonymously to 3 other agencies, ensuring an actual inspection would happen. Mrs. Romero pulled me aside in the hallway. She spoke quietly, eyes darting toward Dennis's door. His mother drove her to dialysis 3 times a week. She couldn't risk losing that ride. She was sorry. She was so sorry. I found myself digging through the dumpster at 2 a.m., looking for evidence that Dennis had lied about his allergies. Found a receipt from 2 weeks ago. Korean fried chicken, extra spicy. The triumph felt hollow when I realized I was now the guy who went through trash in the middle of the night, illuminated by the motion sensor light like some kind of raccoon-human hybrid. My grandmother's recipe got featured in the Korean community newspaper. I did a little victory dance in the courtyard, just a small celebration of her legacy living on. Dennis got it on video. The WhatsApp group titled it Manic Episode in Building Courtyard. Then we both found identical notes under our doors. Same paper, same font, same message about the building sale. Someone was playing Puppet Master, and we were the puppets. Dennis started dating Sarah from my work. She taught him phrases in Korean. He'd walk past my door practicing grandmother's soul, but pronouncing it like something that would make my grandmother blush in her grave. Sarah thought it was cute how hard he was trying. The same conversation about building harmony got reported 3 different ways. Dennis told people I'd threatened his housing. I told people I'd offered mediation. Marcus told his phone camera that we should keep fighting. Then Dennis's lawyer found my old text to my former roommate. These CrossFit bros are culling the building vibe. The email CC'd my employer, mentioning potential discrimination. My boss wanted to talk Monday morning. Lily started telling people I was sad because my grandma died, like her hamster did. Dennis had explained that death makes people act crazy sometimes. She said it with the innocent brutality only a 9-year-old could manage. Marcus's cloud storage accidentally synced to the building Wi-Fi. Everyone could see his files, months of hallway footage, documenting every petty thing we'd done. Dennis's 5 a.m. speaker placement, my strategic ventilation blocking, both of us looking like toddlers fighting over blocks. The property management company sent a letter. We were both listed as problem tenants affecting building sale value. Lease renewal was now under review. I discovered Dennis had been using the building Wi-Fi to order Korean food under fake names, then claiming he never received it. I reported the IP address to the delivery apps. His accounts got flagged for fraud. The TikTok video hit 50,000 views. Jim Bro versus Kimchi King. Food trucks started parking outside outside, hoping to capitalize on our drama. The building entrance became a gauntlet of kimchi tacos and protein smoothies. The retired counselor in 6F mentioned to Dennis that I'd discussed having intrusive thoughts about my neighbor. During a hallway chat, she'd thought she was helping. Dennis thought he'd found ammunition. I tried recording Dennis's dawn workout music. He switched to Korean meditation sounds, doing burpees to Buddhist chants while maintaining eye contact with my window. The smile on his face belonged in a horror movie. Recycling day became a proxy war. Whoever's bins got cited faced fines. Dennis could afford them. I couldn't. He started mixing non-recyclables into my bins at 4 a.m. Night nurse Keiko withdrew her support after complaints about her overnight guests surfaced. She'd lived here 20 years. She wasn't losing her home over our beef. Dennis started wearing cologne that smelled exactly like the hospital where my grandmother died. He'd researched it, found the same industrial cleaner scent, mixed it with Earce by Abercrombie. Every building meeting became a grief trigger. He offered a peace summit. I'd admit to cultural disruption. He'd drop the eviction fight. Marcus filmed the whole thing from behind a potted plant. I refused. The WhatsApp group lit up. Ewan chooses chaos over compromise. Marcus drafted an email to the developer about problem tenants, making the building investment ready. Then I found groceries at my door. Korean pears, the expensive kind. A note in careful handwriting. For your grandmother's soul. Dennis's mom had been leaving them while Dennis was at the gym. We found the building sale documents in the recycling. While we'd been fighting, Marcus had been positioning himself as the stable tenant for buyout negotiations. Every conflict we'd had was listed as evidence of why the building needed new management. My harassment evidence accidentally included timestamps showing Dennis had waited until after my grandmother's funeral to file his first complaint. A small mercy I hadn't noticed in my grief. Mr. Park faced an impossible choice. Back me, morally right, or keep attending Dennis's mom's book club, his only social connection. He chose neutrality but left my grandmother's favorite boricha tea at my door with a note. Some bridges we cross alone. I weaponized my cooking schedule. Kimchi jjigae during Dennis's client calls. Fish sauce experiments during his date nights. The smell of fermented seafood became my passive-aggressive symphony. I mentioned Dennis's illegal wall to the bodega owner, knowing the property manager's assistant bought coffee there every morning. A casual comment became an investigation by afternoon. Then Lily's coding practice accidentally connected to Marcus's unsecured smart TV. His files flooded the screen. Spreadsheets calculating optimal tenant conflict for maximum buyout potential. Documents about leveraging natural tensions. We'd been his puppets all along. Everything clicked into place. The anonymous notes, the convenient documentation, the way conflicts escalated just when they might resolve. Marcus had been conducting his own social experiment, and we were the lab rats. But the damage was done. The building was fracturing. Mrs. Chen still wouldn't look at me. Dennis's mom still brought groceries. And somewhere in the mess of eviction notices and health department complaints, a community was dying. The war wasn't over. It had barely begun. And now we knew who the real enemy was. Previous tenant Adriana emerged from the shadows of building history with a sexual harassment complaint against Marcus. She needed witnesses about the building's hostile environment. Her timing wasn't coincidental. She'd been watching our war unfold from her new apartment across town. The meeting happened in the community room at 7 p.m. Adriana brought documentation thicker than Dennis's workout journal. She laid out Marcus's pattern. Create conflict between tenants, document everything, position himself as the reasonable one during buyout negotiations. 3 buildings, same playbook. Fighting multiple battles meant choices. Immigration paperwork or tenant meeting. Building defense or personal survival. The visa renewal deadline passed while I sat listening to Adriana describe Marcus's methods. 90 days until potential deportation. The clock started ticking louder than Dennis's morning music. Dennis didn't know his victory might be automatic. He sat across the room, still convinced I was his primary enemy, unaware that in 3 months I might disappear from his life without any effort on his part. I maxed out my first credit card paying the immigration lawyer's retainer. Looking at how everything shifts when Adriana walks into that meeting room with her evidence, the whole dynamic between Dennis and Ewan suddenly feels so small compared to what Marcus has been doing. Dennis, meanwhile, panic spent his savings on soundproofing foam for his illegal walls. We were both hemorrhaging money for different kinds of survival. The building's monthly potluck turned into a battlefield. Mrs. Martinez's tamales became ammunition when Dennis accidentally knocked over my kimchi display, which somehow led to me flinging salsa that hit Marcus's documentation binder. Food flew. Alliances formed and dissolved in real time. The 3-way conflict evolved into chaos while Mrs. Chen filmed everything on her phone. My Uber account got deactivated the next morning. Multiple customer complaints about driver discussing building drama during rides. The complaint IP addresses all traced back to our building's Wi-Fi. Marcus's handiwork, but impossible to prove. Sleep became a strategic decision. I dragged my mattress to the kitchen to document Dennis's 3 a.m. noise violations. He reinforced his illegal wall at the same hour, power tools screaming through the darkness. We were both destroying ourselves to destroy each other. Mrs. Kim, the eldest Korean resident, stopped me in the hallway one morning. She held a worn cookbook, pages yellowed with age. Dennis's mom had brought it to her years ago for translation help. Inside the cover, a dedication from Julia with love. Julia, Dennis's stepmother, Korean, dead 5 years. The revelation shifted everything. Every time Dennis gagged at kimchi, every complaint about ethnic smells, every moment of his war against my cooking, it all suddenly had a different shape. Grief wearing a mask of disgust. My investigation into Marcus triggered a building insurance inspection. Inspectors arrived with clipboards and measuring tapes, documenting every lease violation they found. The domino effect started immediately. 7 units received violation notices. Marriages strained as hidden debts surfaced during forced relocations. I'd aimed at Marcus but hit everyone. The playground mothers started avoiding Marcus's daughter. She didn't understand why birthday party invitations stopped coming, why playdates got canceled. She told anyone who'd listen about her daddy's stress, about the mean people in his building who wouldn't cooperate, children becoming casualties of adult wars. I had to continue despite the destruction. Deportation loomed closer each day. The grandmother who'd sacrificed everything to bring me here would understand. She'd fled worse to create better. Now I was destroying the community she'd taught me to nurture. But survival demanded terrible choices. Sarah from work cornered me during break. She'd been dating Dennis for 3 weeks, learning Korean phrases to impress him. Her question cut deep. Was I becoming the kind of Korean who gave us all a bad reputation? The kind who brought conflict and chaos instead of community and food? I froze mid-reply. She didn't wait for an answer. The building meeting that week became a confession chamber. I admitted to calling the cops 2 years ago on upstairs grandmother's neighbors for aggressive music. It had been K-pop, BTS specifically. The irony tasted bitter. Dennis's smugness lasted until his mother arrived. She'd joined the building's book club. Wine loosened tongues and grief found its voice. She told them about Julia, Dennis's stepmother, Korean, loved cooking, died of stomach cancer 5 years ago. Dennis blamed the food, all that fermentation, all those spices, stopped eating Korean cuisine the day she died. Every dish reminded him of loss. The room went silent. Dennis's face crumbled. His war against my cooking wasn't about property values or personal preference. It was about protecting others from the dangerous food that had killed his stepmother. Grief twisted into a crusade. The developer announced an accelerated timeline the next day, 60 days to clear problem tenants or the deal would fall through. Marcus's smile flickered and died. His plan required more time, more documentation. We'd escalated too fast, burned too hot. Dennis's illegal studio suddenly made sense. Not just cheap rent, it was his sanctuary. Julia's things filled the hidden corners, her cookbook collection, photos of her teaching him to use chopsticks, the place where he kept his grief private while performing strength in public. Market rate apartments would mean losing this shrine. Understanding his motivation didn't ease my situation. Immigration authorities don't accept what he was grieving as visa renewal documentation. I had to embrace American ruthlessness to survive. The grandmother who'd taught me kindness would be horrified to see me whistling the developer's jingle while cooking her recipes. Generous Ewan died somewhere between the 15th lawyer consultation and the 3rd credit card application. A desperate immigrant emerged, someone who understood that survival sometimes meant becoming everything your ancestors fled Korea to escape. The American dream demanded American tactics. Property inspector reports got accidentally sent to all residents, revealing the scope of violations. Multiple illegal subdivisions, including Dennis's unit. His sanctuary would be destroyed regardless of our war's outcome. The victory felt hollow when I found him that night, sobbing over Julia's cookbook in the hallway. Same recipes as my grandmother's, same love, different loss. Dennis's counterclaim gained traction when he revealed my visa status at the next building meeting. Foreign national running illegal business sounded official enough to scare people. Everything depended on who Marcus would back at the emergency session about the developer deal. His choice surprised everyone. Marcus backed chaos. More conflict meant more documentation, more evidence of problem tenants, better negotiation position. He needed us fighting while he profited. Dennis's mom made an offer that changed the game. She'd sponsor my visa, but I'd need to help care for Dennis's autistic half-sister, Julia's daughter. She needed Korean speakers, people who could teach her mother's language. The leverage felt like a trap and lifeline simultaneously. The building divided into 3 clear factions. Team Ewan supported cultural preservation. Team Dennis wanted stability and rules. Team Marcus just wanted money. The math was brutal and simple. The developer's lawyer revealed a loophole during negotiations. Buildings could claim protected status if 60% of tenants represented original character, code for ethnic diversity. The calculation wars began immediately, everyone counting who was ethnic enough. While I wondered if being deported would shift the percentages, I contacted the Korean American Community Center where my grandmother had volunteered. 20 years of free cooking classes had to count for something. They offered legal support but needed documented proof of the building's cultural significance spanning 2 decades. The proof required linking Julia's recipe exchange to current residents' cooking traditions. Dennis held the only photos, the only evidence of his stepmother's efforts to build community through food. We needed each other now, bound by our dead women's dreams. Julia's story emerged in fragments. She'd started the recipe exchange to combat isolation after immigrating, taught neighbors to make kimchi, shared shopping lists for H-Mart, created the community I'd inherited and Dennis had rejected. He'd inherited her books but hidden the connection, ashamed of his grief, afraid of his loss. The final evidence came from Dennis's own social media. An Instagram story from his rant about food smells accidentally showed Julia's cookbook open on his counter. Lily screen recorded it before he deleted it. A 9-year-old's quick fingers captured what we'd all missed, both men carrying the same grief, expressed as rage and righteousness respectively. The realization hit me during another sleepless night. Honoring my grandmother meant acknowledging Julia's legacy too. Her handwriting filled the margins of my grandmother's recipe book. They'd been friends. They'd built this community together. We were destroying what they'd created. My visa clock hit 30 days remaining. I committed to the shared heritage despite the ticking countdown. Some bridges you cross alone, Mr. Park had said, but some bridges were built by others for you to cross together. Marcus overplayed his hand at the building meeting, hammered on his own cleverness. He boasted about orchestrating conflicts, manipulating tenants, engineering the perfect conditions for a profitable buyout. He didn't notice Mrs. Chen's phone recording from her purse. Her fall hadn't affected her tech skills. The recording spread through the building's WhatsApp group within minutes. Marcus's voice, clear and damning. I needed them fighting while I negotiated. Every conflict raised my buyout price. Dennis and I stood together for the first time, united against Marcus while maintaining a careful 3-foot bubble of personal space. He still gagged when the kimchi smell from my apartment wafted over. Some reactions were deeper than revelation could reach. The emergency meeting revealed the building's hidden truths. 12 residents were undocumented. 6 lived on expired visas. 8 occupied illegal units. Marcus was the only fully legal resident in his section. He'd planned it that way. Clean hands while everyone else's were dirty. Mrs. and Kim retrieved Julia's cookbook from her apartment. Inside were photos spanning 20 years. Julia teaching residents to make hajun, sharing kimchi at building parties, creating the cultural tradition that might save us all. The dates proved continuity. The faces showed community. Adriana's harassment complaint revealed Marcus's pattern across 3 buildings. Same strategy, same results. She had recordings, emails, a paper trail of manipulation. I just wanted them fighting while I profited, he'd told her 2 years ago. The pattern was clear. The prosecution would be straightforward. The city councilman arrived the next morning. What a bombshell. Marcus just destroyed himself by bragging about playing everyone like puppets, and Mrs. Chen caught it all on her phone. The documentation worked. Cultural heritage status granted based on Julia's legacy, blocking the sale indefinitely. The building was saved, the community was not. Dennis's subdivision investigation got dropped when inspectors found bigger violations in Marcus's units. His greed had accidentally saved Dennis. Investigators focused on the larger fraud, forgetting the smaller infractions. Sometimes the biggest shark makes the smaller ones look like minnows. Victory felt Pyrrhic. Half the building still had to relocate. Visa issues didn't disappear with cultural designation. I still faced deportation. The community remained fractured. Celebrations mixed with moving boxes. Heritage status coexisting with dissolution. Dennis broke down completely during the next book club. The wine, the stress, the revelation about Julia's cookbook. It all combined into a confession. He associated all ethnic food with losing parents to exotic interests, Julia to Korean culture, his father to grief-driven isolation. Food became the enemy because it had taken everyone he loved. Two choices emerged for my visa situation. Mrs. Chen's niece offered marriage sponsorship, a business arrangement, nothing more. Or Dennis's mom would sponsor employment at her catering business, keeping me close to help with Julia's daughter. Both required swallowing different kinds of pride. I chose employment. Staying near my grandmother's memory mattered more than the humiliation of needing Dennis's co-signature as a household member. He signed the papers without looking at me, hands shaking slightly as he wrote his name below mine. The building's new reality took shape slowly. Formal complaint processes replaced casual conversations. A mediation committee met weekly in the room where my grandmother's memorial dinner had started this war. Marcus's empty unit served as a constant reminder of conflict's cost. Everyone was legal now, paperwork filed properly, but no one trusted, no one shared, no one cooked for neighbors anymore. I taught Julia's recipes to her daughter while Dennis watched from the doorway, never entering the kitchen. Some wounds become scars, not healings. Some bridges remain half-built. The little girl learned to pronounce halmoni, while her brother stood guard against the food that called their mother, or so he believed. The building's protection included cultural designation and rent control preservation, but community requires more than legal documents. It needs trust, sharing, the kind of love that expresses itself through extra portions and borrowed ingredients. We'd saved the structure but lost the soul. My grandmother's photo now shared wall space with Julia's in the community room. Two women who'd understood that food was love, that community was survival, that kindness could bridge any gap. Their legacy lived in legal documents now, not in shared meals or borrowed cups of gochugaru. Dennis still couldn't eat kimchi. The smell made him gag, tears forming that had nothing to do with spice levels. I still cooked at 3 a.m., grief insomnia permanent now. We passed in the hallway like ghosts, haunting the same space without touching the same world. The war was over. We'd all lost. Marcus faced fraud charges that would likely result in serious jail time. His daughter changed schools to escape the whispers. His wife filed for divorce. He'd won 3 buildings worth of buyout money over the years, but lost everything that mattered in the process. The food trucks eventually stopped coming. The TikTok views dropped off. New drama in other buildings captured the internet's attention. We became yesterday's entertainment, today's cautionary tale, tomorrow's forgotten story. But every morning, Dennis's mom still left Korean pears at my door, and every evening, I left Julia's favorite tea at Dennis's. Small gestures in a broken place. Proof that even destroyed communities leave fragments of kindness. The building stood protected, culturally significant, legally preserved. Inside, we moved like strangers who knew each other's deepest wounds. We'd saved our home by destroying what made it home. Victory and defeat became indistinguishable when the cost was community itself. 6 months to resolve, 6 months to shatter, 6 months to learn that winning meant nothing when everyone lost. The ghosts of 2 Korean women watched their legacy transform from love to law, from community to court documents, from shared meals to separate griefs. The Korean American Community Center needed more than just photos. They required witness statements, building records, and documentation spanning 2 decades. I spent the next morning in their cramped office, surrounded by filing cabinets that smelled like kimchi and bureaucracy. The volunteer coordinator recognized my grandmother's name immediately. She pulled out attendance sheets from 1998, my grandmother's signature on every page. Dennis arrived 30 minutes later. He carried Julia's recipe binders, hands trembling as he set them on the desk. The coordinator's eyes widened at the collection. Original handwritten recipes, class schedules, photos of Julia teaching residents to make pajun in the building's community kitchen, 23 years of cultural exchange documented in fading ink and yellowed photographs. The evidence revealed something neither of us expected. Julia had started the recipe exchange after meeting my grandmother at H Mart. They'd become friends, teaching each other regional variations of the same dishes. My grandmother's notes filled Julia's margins. Julia's suggestions decorated my grandmother's recipes. 2 women building bridges with fermented cabbage and shared loneliness. Dennis physically recoiled when the coordinator showed us a photo from 2001. Julia and my grandmother, arms around each other, teaching a kimchi making class in our building's courtyard. Behind them, younger versions of current residents. Mrs. Chen learning to salt cabbage, Mr. Park taking notes. Even Marcus appeared in one corner, actually smiling while holding a jar of gochugaru. The coordinator made copies of everything. Dennis's hands shook harder with each document. I recognized the tremor, same one I developed after my grandmother's funeral. Grief expressing itself through involuntary movement, the body's way of releasing what the mind couldn't process. We returned to find the building in chaos. Immigration and customs enforcement vehicles lined the street. The rumored raid had materialized. Residents scattered like startled birds. Mrs. Chen's niece guided her aunt to a waiting car. The Martinez family loaded boxes with practiced efficiency. Years of preparation activated in minutes. Dennis and I stood frozen in the lobby. Neither of us had called ICE. We looked at each other, then at Marcus's empty apartment. Even facing fraud charges, he'd managed one final manipulation. Anonymous tips didn't require court appearances. The raid lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 7 apartments stood empty. Families separated. Lives disrupted. The building felt hollowed out, like something had scooped out its center and left only walls. Dennis's mom arrived with Julia's daughter, unaware of what had transpired. The little girl ran through empty hallways, calling for Mrs. Martinez, who used to braid her hair. Emergency meeting that night. Remaining residents gathered in the community room. The developer's representative attended via speakerphone, explaining that the raid had simplified negotiations. Fewer tenants meant easier buyout calculations. Marcus might be facing charges, but his plan was succeeding without him. Dennis's mom stood up. She'd been researching property law while we'd been fighting. Buildings with active cultural heritage applications couldn't be sold during the review process. The Korean American Community Center had filed our application that afternoon. We had bought time, nothing more. The city councilman arrived the next morning with good news and bad news. Good. Our cultural heritage application showed merit. Bad. We needed to demonstrate active cultural programming. Empty apartments and departed residents didn't suggest a thriving cultural center. We had 30 days to prove the building's cultural significance wasn't just historical. I started teaching Julia's recipes in the community kitchen. Dennis's mom brought her church group, 12 Korean grandmothers who treated cooking like competitive sport. They corrected my technique while sharing sharing stories about Julia, how she'd helped them navigate American grocery stores, how she'd translated at parent-teacher conferences, how she'd made them feel less alone in a country that often felt too big and too cold. Dennis watched from the doorway, always watching, never entering. His sister played with measuring cups while I taught her mother's kimchi recipe. She had Julia's eyes, but none of her brother's learned revulsion. Food was just food to her. Delicious or not delicious, nothing more sinister. The health department inspection arrived on schedule. The inspector, a tired woman named Patricia, had seen the building's file. 37 complaints in 2 months. She knew something was wrong. I showed her my grandmother's recipes, explained about the memorial dinner that started everything. She took notes but made no promises. Dennis's subdivision investigation resumed when a different inspector noticed discrepancies in the building's original blueprints. His illegal wall had created a fire code violation, 30 days to restore the original layout or face eviction. His sanctuary would be demolished either way. We worked in parallel desperation. I taught cooking classes to prove cultural significance. Dennis reinforced his illegal wall to preserve Julia's shrine, both of us trying to save different versions of home. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. We'd spent months trying to destroy each other's space. Now we were both losing to larger forces. Adriana's lawsuit against Marcus proceeded quickly. She had documentation from 3 buildings, witness statements from former tenants, recordings of his admissions. His assets were frozen pending investigation. The buyout money he'd accumulated sat untouchable in escrow. He'd won everything and could touch nothing. Week 3 brought unexpected allies. The food truck owners who'd capitalized on our drama offered to sponsor cultural events. The TikTok creator who'd filmed our conflict wanted to document the building's history. Even the bodega owner suggested hosting a cultural market in the courtyard. Everyone wanted to help now that help might be profitable. Dennis's mom revealed she'd been planning this for months. Not the conflict, but the resolution. She'd incorporated a catering business, filed for nonprofit status, created a board of directors, all while we'd been fighting. She needed a head chef and cultural coordinator. The positions came with visa sponsorship and housing requirements. Both jobs required living in the building. The catch: Dennis had to co-sign as a household member. His mother's business, his signature required. He'd have power over my immigration status for the next 5 years. The woman who'd raised him after Julia's death wouldn't proceed without his consent. Dennis signed the papers at 3 a.m. I was teaching Julia's daughter to make Cajun when he appeared in the kitchen doorway. First time he'd crossed that threshold since the war began. He placed the documents on the counter and left without speaking. His signature was shaky but legal. The cultural heritage designation came through 2 days before the building sale deadline. The councilman delivered it personally, along with restrictions. No major renovations, no luxury conversions, no displacing current tenants. The developer withdrew their offer within hours. The building was saved. Marcus's plan had failed. We'd won by default and desperation, but winning felt hollow. 7 families remained displaced. Mrs. Chen lived with her niece 40 minutes away. The Martinez children attended new schools. Mr. Apark emerged from his apartment to find half his neighbors gone. He'd preserved neutrality and inherited emptiness. Dennis's illegal wall came down on a Tuesday. I helped him move Julia's belongings to a storage unit. Cookbook by cookbook, photo by photo. 5 years of grief carefully packed into boxes. His hands shook with each item. The shrine was gone, but the sorrow remained. The community kitchen became our neutral ground. I taught morning classes. Dennis's mom ran afternoon sessions. Julia's daughter learned her mother's recipes while her brother maintained careful distance. He'd enter only when the kitchen was empty, checking that everything was properly stored, protecting against dangers only he could see. 3 months later, Marcus's trial began. Fraud, harassment, conspiracy to manipulate housing markets. The charges read like a how-to manual for destroying communities. Adriana testified first, then former tenants from his other buildings. Pattern after pattern of manufactured conflict. He'd made millions by making neighbors into enemies. The verdict was swift. Guilty on all counts. 7 years minimum. His daughter wrote letters to former neighbors, apologizing for her father's actions. She didn't understand what he'd done, only that everyone had left because of him. Dennis's mom added her to the after-school program. Some cycles needed breaking. The building filled slowly. New tenants drawn by cultural programming and below-market rent. The community kitchen served meals 3 times a week. Not the organic sharing of before, but structured and scheduled. We'd saved the building by institutionalizing what had once been natural. Dennis and I developed a routine. Morning kitchen inspection at 6 a.m. He checked safety compliance while I prepped ingredients. We didn't speak beyond necessary logistics. Professional cooperation without personal connection. His mother's business required it. Our survival depended on it. Julia's daughter thrived in the kitchen. She learned Korean and English simultaneously, mixing languages like ingredients. Her brother watched from safe distances, gradually moving closer. Some days he'd stand in the doorway for entire lessons. Progress measured in feet and inches. The food trucks became permanent fixtures. The TikTok documentary aired locally. The bodega's cultural market drew weekend crowds. Our tragedy had become content, our conflict commodified, but it kept the building financially viable. Sometimes survival required selling your story to strangers. 1 year after the war began, I was teaching a kimchi class when Dennis entered the kitchen. Not the doorway, the actual kitchen. He wore Julia's apron, faded and stained. His hands shook as he picked up a knife. The Grandmothers Association went silent. His mother held her breath. Julia's daughter smiled. He lasted 10 minutes. The smell overwhelmed him, sending him rushing to the bathroom, but he'd tried. After everything he'd tried, the grandmothers pretended not to notice when he returned. Pale but determined. They assigned him vegetable prep, safe distance from fermentation, small steps toward healing. The building newsletter featured our classes, professional photos of Dennis and me working side by side. The caption read, "Community through cuisine." We looked like partners. The photo didn't capture the 3-foot buffer we maintained, the way we passed ingredients without touching, the careful choreography of shared space without shared connection. My visa was approved on a Tuesday, 5-year renewable status tied to employment. Dennis's mom handed me the approval notice during dinner prep. Dennis was teaching his sister to julienne carrots. He nodded once when told. Nothing more needed. We'd both gotten what we required. Legal status for me. Preserved building for him. Victory through mutual necessity. The anniversary of my grandmother's death arrived with spring rain. I cooked her favorite dishes in the community kitchen. Dennis appeared with Julia's cookbook. He placed it beside my grandmother's, open to the same recipe. Different handwriting, same love. We cooked in parallel silence. 2 men honoring 2 women who'd known food meant more than sustenance. The building thrived in its wounded way. Cultural center by designation. Community by structure. Home by default. We'd saved it by destroying what made it special. replaced organic connection with organized programs, substituted scheduled meals for spontaneous sharing, but it survived. We survived. Sometimes that was enough. Marcus served his time upstate. His wife remarried. His daughter grew up calling another man father. The money he'd accumulated through years of manipulation paid for therapy and tutoring and attempts to undo damage. He'd gained everything he'd wanted and lost everything that mattered. Prison letters went unanswered. Even enemies can become irrelevant. Dennis learned to eat kimchi on Julia's birthday. One small bite during the memorial dinner. His face contorted, but he swallowed. His mother cried. His sister clapped. I pretended not to watch. Some victories were too personal for witnesses. He managed 3 bites before retreating. Progress came in spoonfuls, not servings. The developer found other buildings to buy. The food trucks moved to new conflicts. The TikTok viewers found fresh drama. We became old news. Just another building that had fought gentrification and won. Nobody talked about what winning cost. How saving spaces sometimes meant losing souls. 5 years passed. Dennis's mom's business expanded. 3 buildings now offered cultural programming. I ran the kitchen operations. Dennis handled compliance and safety. We'd become what we'd never wanted. Business partners bound by necessity and legal documents. His signature on my visa renewals. My cooking keeping his mother's nonprofit funded. Julia's daughter spoke fluent Korean. She taught other children in the after-school program. Her brother had graduated to actual cooking. Simple dishes. Nothing fermented. He'd never loved Korean food, but he'd learned to respect it. Sometimes that was the best healing available. Not erasure of trauma, but accommodation of its presence. The building's walls held photos now. My grandmother and Julia together. The original recipe exchange. Community dinners from decades past. History preserved in frames because the present couldn't recreate it. We'd become a museum of what we'd been. Visitors came to see authentic cultural community. They found scheduled programming and professional cooperation. Dennis and I never became friends. Never shared meals beyond required tastings. Never spoke about that night when everything started. But we showed up every morning, every class, every inspection. 2 men who destroyed each other's peace, working to preserve what remained. Not friendship, not forgiveness, just presence. Sometimes that was all survival required. The last photo in the newsletter showed the community dinner. 60 people sharing Julia's recipes and my grandmother's dishes. Dennis at one end, me at the other. 3 feet of space between us even in celebration. The caption read, "Harmony through heritage." The photo didn't show the empty apartments, the departed families, the mechanical nature of scheduled culture. It showed what we'd saved, not what we'd lost. We'd won everything, protected the building, preserved the heritage, secured our homes, maintained our positions. And in winning, we'd lost the only thing that mattered. The organic community our grandmothers had built with nothing but loneliness and kimchi. Now we had programs and schedules and nonprofit status. We had everything except what we'd fought to save, but we endured. Dennis with his grief, me with my papers, the building with its designation, all of us performing community because actual community had died. Going through motions because motions were what remained. Teaching recipes because recipes could be taught. Everything preserved except the love that made it worth preserving. The war was over. We'd all survived. And in surviving, we'd learned the hardest truth. Sometimes winning means accepting that what you've saved is just the shell of what you've lost. Sometimes victory is just another word for living with consequences. Sometimes the best you can do is show up, cook the food, teach the classes, and pretend that preservation is the same as life. Every morning, Dennis checked the kitchen safety. Every morning, I prepped ingredients. Every morning, we honored our dead by maintaining what they'd built. Not because we'd forgiven, not because we'd healed, but because the alternative was letting it all disappear. And after everything we'd lost, we couldn't bear to lose the little that remained. Thanks for reading this story with me. I hope you have a wonderful day filled with warmth and kindness. I'll see you in the next one.